I used to go to the Briarwood School District in Connecticut during my middle and high school years. It was a wealthier district, and they offered a lot of field trips. I was in the choir, so every year we'd go on at least 1 or 2 trips. The year I'm talking about, when I was a sophomore, we went to Pineview Lodge in Pennsylvania. The bus ride there took a few hours, and I was with my friend Jason. We were going to share a room. When we arrived, we figured it would be pretty quiet, since it was November and cold. We had 3 days planned for the trip, and there were 4 chaperones. They didn't really follow us around. We just had to tell them what activities we were doing. The first day was fun. Jason and I, along with 2 girls we were friends with, went go-karting, rock climbing, swimming, and then had dinner. After dinner, we went back to our room and hung out. Just so you know, not all the students had rooms next to each other. Our room was on the ground floor, and there was a sliding door that looked out over the lake down the hill. We went back out for a while and came back around 10 o'clock. We left the blinds open because the moon was shining on the lake and it looked cool. We didn't know it yet, but that would be the start of something strange. We probably spent about an hour just trying to get comfortable in our beds and talking a bit. Then Jason, whose bed was closer to the door, screamed. I had no idea what was going on or if it was a joke, but when I looked at the door, I saw something that looked like it came straight out of a horror movie. There was a really tall, thin, older woman with gray hair standing on the other side of the door. She had her hands pressed against the glass like she was trying to see inside. After a moment, she walked away. Jason looked at me like he was waiting for me to get up so he could follow me. We both ran outside, but we didn't see her anywhere. The walkway past all the rooms was empty, and there was no one on the grass or walking down the hill. We knew we saw her, though, so we weren't imagining it. The next day, we didn't tell any of the chaperones, but we did tell the 2 girls we were friends with. When night came again, after a busy day of activities, we went back to our room. This time, we made sure to shut the blinds. Jason fell asleep before me, and I followed about 30 minutes later. I woke up to complete silence. I wasn't sure if something had woken me up, or if it was just my bad feeling. I sat up and whispered Jason's name to see if he was awake, but he didn't answer. When I turned to look at him, I couldn't see him at all. Something was blocking my view of his bed. I looked up, and right over me was the tall, old woman. She took 2 steps back and said, "Your back door was unlocked," then turned and walked out. I was completely frozen in that bed, shaking. I woke Jason and told him what happened. We locked the back door, shut the blinds again, and decided to stay up the rest of the night. It was already 4 in the morning, so we figured we wouldn't be losing much sleep. At 8 o'clock, we went to the dining hall for breakfast. When we got back to the building and were about to tell our chaperones, we saw the old woman through the glass of the next room. She was sitting on the bed with her hands folded facing the door, staring at us. We ran to the front desk to tell the staff instead of the chaperones. It was weird. They didn't seem to know what to do. After some convincing, we got them to come with us to the woman's room. When they walked in, they found the woman sitting just like before, and an older man was sitting on the other bed, staring at them. Apparently, the woman had some kind of mental health issues, and the man wasn't really all there either. They didn't seem like the kind of people you'd expect to see at a nice, family-friendly place. The staff wouldn't make them leave, though, so we told our chaperones what had happened. Long story short, after a lot of arguing between the chaperones and the staff, we had to end the trip early and go home. Jason and I were just happy to get out of there. When I was in 4th grade, my class took a field trip to a small zoo about an hour away from school. I remember it clearly. It was a cloudy day, with a couple of raindrops here and there. The zoo was pretty small, but it was nice for kids. It had a lot of smaller animals and some habitats, though nothing too exotic. There was also a big building where they displayed taxidermied animals and other interesting stuff, though I can't remember much about it now. To be honest, I wasn't exactly normal in elementary and middle school. I would do strange, antisocial things, and both my teachers and my mom would notice. For some reason, while we were touring the building, I decided to walk into one of the bathrooms without telling any of the teachers. I did what I had to do, washed my hands, and came back out into the hallway. Nobody was around, so I decided to walk down a hallway we hadn't been to yet. I still remember the dim, moody lights and the scarlet-red carpets. My 8-year-old mind was racing as I looked at the stiff, lifeless animals behind the glass boxes. That's when I stopped, seeing a man hiding behind a stack of chairs. I think I laughed, thinking he was just playing around. He came out from behind the chairs and walked over to me, asking where the group went. I said I didn't know, and he grabbed my hand and told me to follow him. I probably thought he was taking me back to the group. He led me to an exit door, which opened to a back area with some dumpsters, benches, and woods. Once we got outside, his grip on my arm tightened, and he started pulling me toward the woods. I was so scared I thought I might throw up, but I didn't scream or cry for help. Then, a woman screamed, one of the teachers on the other side of the fence. The man let go of me and ran into the woods. A few teachers came rushing out of the building and pulled me back inside. They were really angry at me, but also comforted me and hugged me. They called my parents, and the field trip was over. The owners of the zoo called the cops, and we all got back on the buses and went home. As my bus was leaving the parking lot, though, my observant 8-year-old self spotted the man crouching behind a branch in the woods, watching the buses go by. For some weird reason, I didn't say anything. Maybe I was too shy or just too shaken up to speak up. The other kids stared at me, but I didn't care. I just hoped that man never got away with trying to grab a kid like me again. Back in high school, I took a class about mysteries and mythology or something like that. Honestly, I don't remember the exact name, but it was all about real-life mysteries and creepy stuff. I was really into that kind of thing. I took the class with my good friend, who I'll call Ben for this story. The teacher took us on a field trip to an old, abandoned village with a mysterious past. The village was built in the early 1900s, but it looked like it was quickly abandoned shortly after it was made. The bus ride there was about 20 minutes, and all of us were glued to the windows as we pulled up on this sketchy-looking run-down road that cut through a dense forest. Eventually, the road led to a clearing, and we were there. We stepped out onto the road, which had grass growing through the cracks. The grass around us was almost knee-high. Then we saw the buildings, tall old brick buildings with boarded-up windows. Everything about it felt eerie. The teacher counted all 20 of us and then started leading the way. The goal of the field trip was for us to use what we learned in class to figure out why the village had been abandoned so long ago. Some of the buildings had holes in the walls that acted as entryways, and there were even holes in the ground next to some of them, like they were dug to get into basements. It was pretty creepy, but there was one building that stood taller than all the rest, and it caught my attention the most. While the teacher was leading the group to the village church, Ben and I decided to sneak off and explore on our own. We headed toward the tallest building. We found a hole in the ground near the back door, which was sealed shut. The hole led down to a concrete floor below, and there was a ladder inside. We exchanged looks and knew we had to check it out. Ben climbed down first, then I followed. Luckily, by this time, Apple had started putting flashlights on their phones, so we had a light source. It was creepy down there. There were a few beer bottles, some graffiti on the wall, and dusty wooden planks everywhere. There was a wooden stairway that led up into complete darkness. Since we were already down there, we decided to go up the stairs too. I went first, and each step creaked like it was going to break. Ben followed me up. This floor of the building was tight with lots of little rooms. It was so dark inside that you wouldn't even guess it was daytime outside. We were both starting to get creeped out, so we agreed to leave. But just then we heard a noise from one of the small rooms, like a big rock hitting the concrete floor. Normally we would have run, but we froze. We locked eyes, then tiptoed toward the opening of the room. We shined our flashlights inside and quickly ran back down the stairs and up the ladder, back outside. We caught up with the group, out of breath, but we didn't say anything to the teacher to avoid getting in trouble. One of our classmates asked what was wrong, and we told him we snuck into a building. When we shined our lights into one of the rooms, we saw 3 guys standing maybe 10 feet away from the doorway, facing us in a strange way, as if they were waiting for us. As we kept following the group, we couldn't help but glance back at the tall building. Before we left, We saw a face in one of the upper-level windows that hadn't been boarded up. We never told the teacher, mainly because we didn't want to get in trouble. But we had no idea what to think. Were those guys just homeless people? Or were they gang members hiding in the building? Ben freaked me out even more with his theory. He thought they were ghosts of the people who once lived in the town. The way those three guys were just standing there so calmly, staring at us the moment we peeked through the doorway, it still haunts me. I can't get that image out of my head. Part of me thinks I might go back to that village one day just to prove Ben's theory wrong.